Hello and welcome to the Block Solid podcast, where we talk about the evolution of the property market, the newest technologies that enhance and revolutionize the world of real estate as we know it, and how we, the owners, the buyers, the renters, the investors, and the entrepreneurs can benefit from it all. I'm Yael Tamar, co-CEO and co-founder of Solid Block, pioneer in real estate tokenization, and I'd like to welcome my friend Nisa Amoils, who is widely known as a leading blockchain and crypto investor, as my special guest on today's episode. Hey, Nisa, how are you doing?
Great. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And on a Sunday, what's happening over there?
Well, it's Groundhog Day, really. It's every day is pretty much the same in New York. So Sunday is kind of like meaningless.
That's funny. You live in New York City?
I do.
Where?
Uptown, kind of more east.
Okay, very cool. What's your favorite restaurant?
Oh, gosh. That's probably the hardest question of the whole podcast. There's so many restaurants in New York. I really can't name my favorite.
Gotcha. Yeah, so you just asked me before we started recording what's happening over here in Israel. And, it's obviously COVID 2021. It's COVID day 375 or something, right? The COVID diaries. Things have started opening up. A lot of people have been vaccinated here. So I went over the weekend. Some friends of ours were at a party in a hotel, and everybody had to show their vaccinations on the way in. But it was really strange. There was 100 people dancing, and I was like, "This is unreal." I didn't join. I was just like kind of on the side. And I'm like, I can't. Like, it just doesn't seem normal to me, So,
and no one was wearing a mask.
No one was wearing a mask. I think they were supposed to still be wearing a mask, but people are not adhering necessarily to the mask rule now. They kind of feel relaxed because they were, all vaccinated and so on. But yeah, they're supposedly allowed to be in one space. It was outside, of course. It was outside. The weather is great in the south of Israel, 23 degrees Celsius. I guess that's like high 70s in Fahrenheit. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous.
Well, hopefully they'll open up and you'll come to visit and we'll take you to a party. And now I'd like to tell our listeners a few words about who you are. Nisa is passionate in investing in new technologies, and her background in legal and regulatory risk management is making her the perfect investor. She's been a venture capitalist and family office investor for the past decade. She's committed to building a more healthy, equitable, diverse, and transparent future through investment in new technologies. She's a securities and corporate lawyer and is FINRA licensed. She also hosts a weekly show on digital assets and rights for Forbes. She is a regular contributor on CNBC, MSNBC, Fox, Bloomberg, and others. She serves on boards of companies and nonprofits, including Wharton Entrepreneurship. She was early in blockchain and crypto and subscribes to convergence theory that blockchain underlies most areas of disruptive innovation, such as IoT, Internet of Trust, autonomy, artificial intelligence, and has the capacity for impact. And also, I would love to talk to Nisa about something new, a fund called A100X. And I am so stoked about that. When I read that, I thought this is 100% for you. From what I've known about you, what I read about you, the articles I read on Forbes, I'm really, really excited to talk to you about that. Anything I missed?
No, I wrote a book about women in blockchain. It's called WTF is Happening, Women Founders on the Rise. And I profiled 13 female founders in the space and made the business case for investing in them.
That is amazing. Has anybody reached out to you afterwards saying, I invested in a company that you mentioned?
Yes, actually. I mean, the book came out in 2019, so it's been out for a while now, but you can track the progress of all the entrepreneurs in there, and they're all doing pretty well. So it's really exciting.
It is super exciting. I mean, I love the whole, women helping women as of late, and not just in theory, not just, kind of writing books about it, but also following through. And that's one of the things that you're doing, kind of eat your own dog food, work with women, invest in women. So I think that's real cool. Yeah. Especially in, a few days after the International Women's Day.
So. Yes, exactly.
Very cool. Well, that's a really important addition to your bio. So let's start with just the beginning. I'd love to hear about your journey of becoming who you are today, an investor, and, your corporate background as well. So tell us a bit more about that.
So I started out as a securities and corporate lawyer. Then I moved into working in media. There's a company in New York called IAC, Interactive Corp, which back then was really more USA Network and NBC Universal. It had its roots in media background. And so I was there right around 1990, early 90s, and investing in the internet back then, and always very interested in investing in technology and how that was going to disrupt different industries. And I got more involved in investing along the way, first as a generalist and as an angel, and then as part of two different venture capital funds. And so I became aware of the discrepancies as I entered the venture capital system, and women were still getting 2% of all the funding. And that's when I wrote the book. But I really have been investing in technology, I would say now for about 10 years, and then investing in blockchain enabled businesses and crypto for about 5 years. And now I exclusively focus in that area, and that's what A100X is focused on as well.
Yeah, tell us more about 100X.
So it's a new fund that was set up. My co-founder is Alex Bulkin, who started Coin Fund, and he spent 15 years as a technologist at Goldman Sachs. And we had been co-investing for a while and decided that we were going to pursue this white space in the market. We saw a lot of investment, obviously, in crypto and the recent institutional run-up of 2020, and speculation and trading as the main use case and the main media attention headline grabber. And as you know, I had been investing in security tokens for about 3 years already. And Alex seeded Dapper Labs, which is doing NBA Top Shot now. And so we had always been investing in these other areas and other use cases. And we had seen so many different startups that were trying to use the technology for battling the issues that we've seen in the pandemic with healthcare, vaccination rollout, clinical trial coordination, contact tracing, or with climate change, carbon offsets, with supply chains, with title and identity, and all these other areas that these great companies were being formed now. And we thought that this would be the next wave. While there were a lot of impact funds in the market already, a lot of them did not understand the technology well enough to be able to deploy there. And so we saw this white space and said, we want to focus the fund at the intersection of investing in these technologies with impact as well.
Okay. Tell me more about the impact. How do you measure impact, or how do you even define impact?
Yeah, that's been one of the industry issues for a long time in ESG, and you have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And there's always been some confusion, I would say, about how to measure impact exactly. And I think that with the new administration in the US, and we're starting to get some more clarity around it. For us, we're looking for like-minded founders who want to not only provide great returns, but also bring in some positivity into the world, some problem solving, some solutions-based approach. And so that's what we're really looking for. It's more of a mindset.
Got it. Okay, so it's basically you'll know it when you see it, right?
Exactly.
Understood. So talk to me about your track record in blockchain and crypto investments and also security tokens. I mean, obviously, when we met, we talked about your investment in the Aspen coin, which we helped facilitate with our tech. And what other things? And were there any other investments that you made in security tokens? And talk to me about your blockchain and crypto investments too.
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, we've invested in lots of different companies in the space, primarily in infrastructure, not so much in layer one or layer two solutions. Obviously, had invested in crypto kind of early on, but more interested in building out the actual infrastructure. And yes, I've invested in other STOs. I was an investor in Securitize have been with Vertalo for 3 years, I think now. Also on the board of another company called Pontoro, that is the intersection of security tokens with large infrastructure build-out projects, and a bunch of other ones along the way, but also have invested in things like Protego Trust, which is just got approved for their OCC National Trust Charter Bank, which is a big deal in the US. And there are, other areas like, as I mentioned, Dapper Labs, but also Mythical Games, which is blockchain-based gaming, which we are very bullish on. Yeah, so I would say it's been pretty broad across the different sectors of applying blockchain technology.
That is really cool. I love how, you collected these successful companies in the space of STOs, but also touching very traditional finance, right? So I feel like what we're doing in our industry is really the bridge between the old finance and the new. You still need those licenses and you still need compliance, and that's where your background comes in. And yet we understand that we need to do things in a different way to really get on with the times and get on with what customers want, which is they want to be their own bank. They want to hold their own assets. They want to get in and out of assets whenever they want, right?
Right. Yeah. And we'd like to also say that we're pre-hype investors. So, I think the Dapper was a good example. That was 3 years ago. And obviously there was DeFi before the DeFi summer. And now there's NFT winter and, these hype cycles. We didn't invest in ICOs. I think a lot of what's helpful about being a securities lawyer in this space as an investor is to know what is going to be legal, not legal to invest in, and to have enough experience to see what is coming down the pike by, paying attention to the regulatory actors and the rulemaking that they're enacting.
That is very smart. Speaking of NFTs, do you think that's going to hold water in the future with this, with the whole security space?
Yeah, I think that there will be some more clarity around regulating that space. Right now, it's just blown up. Like, it feels very reminiscent of the ICO boom.
For sure.
And I think there'll be some issues like copyright and, what people are actually buying and what rights get associated with that. Everybody who just jumped in isn't really paying that much attention to that right now. They're just, trying to get the latest celebrity on board with an NFT or, the highest price at the Christie's auction for people or, whatever the headline is. And regulation usually catches up with some of that in a few months' time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like, people sometimes jump in because of the FOMO, fear of missing out, which is a big driver, especially in our industry. Where early people, people who come in early obviously win a lot, and people at the end of the line lose a lot. And I hope that, the regulators jump in before ordinary people who, invest before the regulation prohibits for them to invest, get hurt. So let's hope that the regulators start moving faster. So, regulator is our foe and our friend, in this industry. Right. Okay, that's cool. What about DeFi? Is there a definition of DeFi, and what is it for you?
I've seen so many different definitions of DeFi, but we wrote a Forbes article about it. There's the Global Blockchain Council that I'm a part of, and we tried to create sort of an Investopedia of DeFi. I'll share the link with you so you can put it in the notes. But yeah, I think, the most common definition is really peer-to-peer exchanges, decentralization, eliminating rent-seeking middle parties. And I think that, the promise of DeFi was that more participants could participate and it would solve some of the issues around the unbanked, et cetera. But, as you were saying, the early adopters are not those people. It's still complicated and hard to use. And so it created this speculative frenzy over the summer. And I think hopefully that the innovation there will lead eventually to these solutions. And, I'm still very optimistic about DeFi, and I think it will be regulated somehow. eventually. But for right now, I'm very interested to follow what's coming out of the sector. We wouldn't really invest in DeFi in our fund because while we have invested our own money in it, we wouldn't want to, as a fiduciary, we think the risks are excessive to put other people's money at risk that way right now. So we're not going to be investing in that area.
Understood. So you said that DeFi is a way for decentralizing, I guess, well, obviously decentralized finance, decentralizing, finance or transfer and exchange, right, of value. So where can that be applied outside of trading?
Well, that's a really good question. A lot of what we're talking about now with NFTs is what we were talking about with DeFi, and really just it's kind of like which method you're going to use to have the internet of trust or of value and exchanging it. And now I'm seeing a lot of gray overlap there between security tokens, NFTs, DeFi, in terms of how peer-to-peer exchanges are happening. And I'm interested to see what develops now beyond the speculation and trading.
Absolutely. Me too. Yeah. So I'm thinking, if we're really talking about decentralized finance is all-encompassing area. It encompasses banking, savings, investments,
lending,
mortgages and loans, and the way to preserve and grow your wealth, right? And there are thousands of applications that are connected to all of that right now. Consumer applications, enterprise applications, financial service provider applications, right? So there's all these different layers, and there's, of course, providers in all these layers, the providers in the supply chain. So I feel like there's so much opportunity in the industry that the industry is actually not capturing. Everybody's so focused on these DeFi exchanges because they're making people a lot of money, right? People who understand it and can actually take the risk, people who can afford taking the risk, right? But I'm wondering if there are, funds like yours and just savvy investors who understand finance and how, if we take all of these thousands of applications that exist for consumers, for banks, for broker dealers, for asset owners, they're literally thousands. And then we can apply them all to DeFi and just kind of make the switch, just like what we did when the internet came about, right? So there was a search engine that was basically a yellow pages book, right? So, you put that apply it on the internet. So now, you can put things on the blockchain that we've done in the last 10 years, took stuff, put it on the blockchain. Now you can take stuff and put it on DeFi. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I think your analogy to the internet is one that I often use. It's like Bitcoin is really like TCP/IP, Ether is really like www, and FTP is Filecoin. And I think there were so many different standards that came out then, and we ended up with a few, like these few. The same thing is going to happen again. In this case, we're just at that Cambrian explosion of creativity right now, and then there will be a few winners.
What does that mean? What is Cambrian explosion?
Oh, it's just an expression for like everybody's innovating right now and everybody's coming up with a new experiment, and that's what we're seeing and that's what we're reading about. And then that phase will pass and then we'll settle in on a few standards.
Oh, okay. When the dust settles, I guess.
Yeah, when the dust settles.
Cool. All right, so let's go back to your fund because that's fascinating because you're one of the few women VCs and and so knowledgeable as well. So I feel like I am getting these pearls of wisdom from you right here. So blockchain, AI, other emerging tech, that's kind of the focus you mentioned. What is your biggest goal for this fund in terms of how much you'd like to invest in total and how many companies, anything very specific, stages? Give us the overall.
So it's a rolling fund, which means it can theoretically be any size. And we just keep rolling in raising capital. There's no specific, our fund is closing on X date and it's this size. It's different concepts. And investors in the fund can roll on and commit for 4 quarters. And if they're not happy, they can roll off or they can increase if they're happy. So really, it gives a lot of optionality to our investors. And for me, that was attractive because it's very much in line with the democratization of finance. And it allows more investors to come into our fund at a lower minimum, which is a lot of what STOs did.
Yeah. What is the minimum with you guys?
Well, the minimum fluctuates. It's lower for women and minorities. Part of the reason is because women and minorities have largely been shut out of having access to these kinds of funds because normally it requires an accredited investor, let's say, to invest $250,000, and a lot of them don't have that kind of money, but they still want the returns that a fund like this could provide and the diversified exposure. And so we feel like we're creating this opportunity for the first time because we're using this rolling fund structure. We can do it. And we want women and minorities to participate in the wealth creation that's happening in this asset class. Because right now, if you're looking at the list, you see it's men that have really created the wealth in this asset class. And for technology that's really 11 years old when the Bitcoin white paper came out, that's really not acceptable because then we're just repeating the same patterns that we had in traditional tech or traditional finance. So if we're going to disrupt and make things more accessible, we really need to be able to do that in fund structures as well.
Yeah, I love that, Mo. That's great. So you said roll off. Does that mean you buy them out or you have some tokenized structure for them to trade?
Yeah, meaning that you no longer have to commit. So normally in a traditional fund, you commit your amount, whatever it is, and you're typically locked up for 8 to 13 years, depending how long the life cycle of the fund is and the company's exit. And here, if you commit for 4 quarters and you don't want to commit anymore, you don't have to. So you're still getting the economics on whatever happened in the 4 quarters that you were committed.
Yeah. So how do you technically facilitate the rolling off? Do you buy them out?
You don't have to buy them out because it's kind of like the way the back end works is each quarter could be considered like its own little mini fund. Mm-hmm. So you would just get a quarterly report, let's say for quarter 4 that you're part of, and then not get one anymore for quarter 5 for whatever happened in quarter 5 if you rolled off.
Okay. So basically, let's say that I want to invest $100,000 in the fund.
Right.
And let's say I invested and I held it for 12 months and I got, the reports. I'm happy, continuing on, or maybe I'm happy, but I need the money. So what happens then? I need the money back. Can I get?
Well, if you need the money back that you invested already, you would need to wait for a liquidity event for whatever happened in those 4 quarters. Let's say we invested in 10 companies in 4 quarters. Mm-hmm. And 5 of them were acquired and 1 of them went public. I'm just making this up, right? Yeah. You would have the returns from whatever happened there and you would get cash on cash returns.
Okay, understood.
And we're shooting for that to be, at least 2 to 3 times what you put in.
That is amazing. All right. Have you considered tokenized structure?
Yes. So a few years ago, I was on the board of a tokenized fund. And at that point, I think it was really still too early. It's hard to tokenize a fund because you need to really value the NAV of the underlying company. So it's hard to know if it's trading like above NAV or below NAV. And so I think there's still some issues with tokenized funds and the way the security token market has developed, as has been, slower than we would have liked. And it's an option down the road, but I think right now we're going to stick with this structure. Yeah. But we can also, we have the ability to hold tokens and invest in tokens. So we would still continue to look for STO opportunities.
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. That's very exciting. You're going to have a mix of equity and tokens. That's really cool. All right, fantastic. And when investors invest, do they have a say in where their money is deployed, or is it just investment in a fund?
Yeah, typically in a fund structure, you're relying on your manager to do the work for you. And that's why people invest in funds, is because they may not have time in their day-to-day lives or jobs to keep up with a fast-paced industry where everything's changing all the time. And they're really banking on the fact that we have a good track record and that we are going to make the best investment decisions.
Yeah.
That said, our investors will also have the right to co-invest with us in certain companies. So they will have some say in that as well.
I love that. Awesome. So continuing the conversation about tokenization, you invested in the Aspen coin, and I'd love to learn about your experience with that. And, recently what's happening. We've seen that it's trading pretty much at the same level of pricing, ever since it launched on T0. So it seems like there is some sort of a liquidity premium of about 30 cents on the dollar. But I'd love to learn about your experience. And also, you mentioned about the industry not moving as fast as we thought it would. So I'd love to hear about your thoughts behind why.
Yeah, absolutely. So my experience investing in Aspen Coin was great. And I still think that trophy real estate properties, as we've learned, have held their value and then some during the pandemic, which is really impressive. And what's so cool about that project is that it's almost a hybrid utility security token now, because if you actually go stay at the resort, you get discounts and you get like spa treatments and you get all these loyalty points and you get like all these benefits. There's all this utility to it. I think it's really great use case as a hybrid. And I think that's a perfect example of democratization of access.
I love that. Did you go down there to get a spa treatment or not yet?
No, it's pandemic. It's on the list, but we should do a field trip there, I think.
We should. I was lucky to be in a hotel spa yesterday. See how glowing I am. Maybe that's why.
Oh, fantastic.
Everybody jealous right now, I think. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I think T0 has been for a while. I mean, there was like Open Finance, which I think they delisted some tokens or was absorbed into. Yeah, I mean, there were a few trading platforms. There wasn't enough volume back then to really, for these companies to really make money with it. And I think there's been some fundamental pieces of the value chain here that have been slowly been building out, everything from price discovery to market making to analyst reports on the actual project. Because, a lot of what security tokens are really just a digital wrapper on another type of investment. And that investment has to stand on its own as quality. And so, but, if you weren't really in the industry and you didn't really understand how this worked, it was kind of hard to access or find out about it. And I mean, I think it's great that normally investors in that kind of a project would be in real estate insiders or private equity people, and it would never get to other accredited investors globally, which it did in this case. So that project proved that that could be done. And I think we're going to see, I know that there's coming down the pike, and much more real estate projects, especially in this time where a lot of property is distressed. And the more liquidity, the more price discovery you have or accuracy, and then the more investors are willing to invest or lend against it. So I think we'll start to see a lot more of that, especially in 2021.
Yeah, amen to that. A really interesting thing that I just noticed here in Israel, at least, is that hotel companies are buying loads of hotels. And that's not only because they're on sale, but also they're anticipating a great resurge of the market. Part of it is the vaccine, and part of it is just, people are cooped up in their homes and apartments. They're waiting to come out. And, it seems like the industry is not going anywhere. It's different from offices, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, there's a lot of pent up demand, I think, and a lot of companies coming in and buying these distressed assets.
Yeah, I've been following real estate reports. It's just fascinating. The minute a hotel goes on sale in Israel, somebody's buying it. And,
Right.
that's an early signal of what's to come. Also, I think that for Israel, there's been some rumors that they'll open 3 Pfizer plants. And I'm wondering if they'll have like a tourist, medical tourism for people coming to get vaccines, perhaps. But also, I think they're trying to become like the green zone, which reminds me of the movie World War Z, the zombie apocalypse. Have you seen that one? Yeah, they built a wall around Jerusalem and like it was a green area. Very, very foreshadowing of what's happening. But yeah, I think that you'll have those green zones are all around the world, and we have to see where they are and kind of look for opportunities there. I think another one of those is actually like Thailand, and specifically Phuket, Thailand. So yeah, we're involved in the hotel there right now, in Tokenized Hotel. So I think there'll be like around 10 green zones. So I'm working on an article to identify what those green zones are going to be.
Oh, I would love to read that. Yeah, that's fantastic. One of the companies we're looking at investing in out of the fund is providing climate data to these real estate developers and insurance companies about using AI and blockchain predictive, so that if, you are building a hotel in Thailand, for instance, and, when would the next tsunami happen based on climate patterns or things like that. I just think it's really going to be very useful. And as we continue to face climate change, right, it's very impactful.
It's imperative. You mentioned you want to go to the Maldives, right? Before it sinks, right? So to the bottom of the earth. That was my thought, about 12 years ago when I went. I was like, I gotta get there. Maldives has another 3 years, 30 years to go.
Exactly. I can't believe they've built these underwater hotel rooms there. It's just amazing. It's still on my list of places to get to. I don't think I'll make it for that event though.
Yeah.
Remote, but one day.
One day. In a few months. Yeah. I'd be happy to hang out in the Maldives with you. That'd be fun. Yeah. And here in Eilat, in the south of Israel, there were a few restaurants underwater as well. So I think, they're all closed right now. But when I go diving, you kind of see the restaurant inside from underwater. You see all the tables, you kind of feel like the fish that's, from the outside looking in. So, that's pretty cool. So I heard you spoke with Kyle Solin and Herwig Konings of the Security Token Group, which tracks the activity of the security token market. Now, somebody recently told me that Herwig listed Solid Block as the company of the week or the company of the month or something like that. So if you're listening, I appreciate that. So also he mentioned that hundreds of real estate offerings of all kinds via all types of instruments and fund vehicles will come to the market this year, I presume 2021. Now, as someone that knows the investor's perspective, do you think that investors are going to be eager for the opportunity of this new asset class, or if it will take a little bit longer?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of their statements. If you look at 2020, there were so many different milestones in the security token market, like 15 countries have defined what they are around the world. 7 of the 10 largest banks are involved. They did the first, Curzio Research was doing a offering that listed on a secondary exchange, and they used Rule 144 to trade to retail investors. This Fat Brands blockchain-based bond was rated by Morningstar higher given its blockchain usage.
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then using digital cash to purchase them, like Oasis filed, or they got FINRA SEC approval to do that. Using stable coins for settlement was also a big movement that happened, kind of, came up again when in the GameStop, Robinhood, Reddit kind of fiasco. And then, more centralized and decentralized exchanges. And I think, what was it? The opening market cap in secondary trading was like 59 million. And, that's still relatively small compared to other asset classes. But I think it was like most of the activity in this sector, like it grew 500% in 2020. It was most of it happened in 2020. So if we look at all the milestones that happened last year, absolutely, there's every reason to be bullish about what's going to happen this year. And I think, tokenized real estate will still be main stage, taking a lot of the attention. But all these other like use cases like art and luxury cars and sports teams and all the other things we've kind of seen along the way, I think there'll be some more activity there. And then I think venture investors like myself will continue to continue to invest in the infrastructure that's building out the whole value chain. And those companies will continue to go into their growth rounds as well. So, yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot of different things. It was kind of a summary of what had happened, kind of the state of the industry in the past year. And while I don't think, all real estate will only be raised via tokenization or anything like that, but I think that's a much longer play, this whole tokenize the world. Not everything should be tokenized, but certainly there are a lot of assets that should, because it just makes sense from an automation, transparency, and liquidity point of view. So as more people realize that, and as there's more regulatory clarity around certain issues, then we'll start to see a much bigger participation from both retail and institutional.
Sure. Well, I also saw that there's about 27 million of tokens being traded, from the real estate backed tokens. I think there are several reasons for that. While on the primary, I would say I read many articles and we put together a table which amounted to several billion of real estate being tokenized or announced as being tokenized. But I think people forgot what being tokenized really means. And, they either forgot to hire lawyers or I'm not sure what happened there. But, tokenization is really two things, securitization and digitization. And the securitization part involves not only even writing the PPM, but also selling the securities to other people. So I would say it's not enough to just say write a smart contract and say that now your asset is tokenized. I believe that there's some rules about selling these securities on the secondary market. There has to be a primary sale. So there has to be exchange of value taking place by non-affiliated parties, which I don't think it was the reality for most of these projects. So first of all, I think that we need to have the primary sale for the, Aspen coin was really the textbook case, and the way Elevated Returns put that together, that was just incredible, I think, and I think in general, the fact that deal was so fast, their investors jumped on, and, there's definitely trust involved when you have like really big lawyers and broker dealers, and the compliance is really, I think this deal actually really created the new standard. And, we've been kind of following that standard all along where, we issue a security by the book with a private placement memorandum, with QSIP, with a Reg D. Now we started also adding Reg CF so that we can actually make security tokens available to everybody, not only to accredited investors, even in the primary level. I'm really hoping that Reg A Plus will also be approved soon for projects that are, property backed or, anything backed security tokens, really.
Right. And Reg CF has increased the amount from 1.07 million to 5 million. That should help as well.
Yeah.
With the unaccredited investors having access to these opportunities as well.
For sure. But, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes when you put the deals together. I think the majority of the players in the crypto industry don't realize how much goes into that, how much legal, how much financial, right? So even when you want to do Reg CF, you have to have reviewed and actually now audited financials if you want to do a 5 million. So there's a lot involved behind the scenes. Now, I think that if we're streamlining all of that and we do that on like a semi-automated basis, and which is what we're now trying to do with Solid Block to get that done as like a conveyor for new issuers. So I think that could really help the industry to go and to kind of take off. I think that's probably also another reason why we don't see a lot of STOs and also a lot of trading on the secondary market. But I think it's all going to change very, very soon.
Yes, absolutely. No, we need companies like Solid Block who are providing that important infrastructure and education to the issuers, because you're right. You can't just issue a security token and expect that, things are going to happen. again, there's market makers, there's price discovery, there's analysts, there's promoters, we need all of that in the industry.
And it doesn't exist. I don't think there are analysts right now, that are specializing in this space. I think that the big brokers right now, they are getting into the space. They're reaching out to us as well, to share materials, to share courses. One of the big Asian banks, actually, Singapore Development Bank, reached out and asked us to do some webinars and courses. So, I think that the industry is waking up, understanding that, the education really needs to go first.
Right. And we're both part of an event coming up March 25th, right? The Security Token Summit, which is kind of like our annual educating the industry about what's going on. And so I know that there will be an announcement there. I've been part of this committee since September, and they plan FinP2P, and they plan to announce the progress that they've made in bringing a lot of people in the industry together, including the institutions and big banks. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. And I heard so many great speakers join, some regulators. So that's really, really exciting. What I would like to see, though, and I think some conferences have tried to do that, is to bring like opposing opinions, right? So we have like the Commissioner of New York, although I do think that what the state has done to like make order in the USDT was fantastic and was really needed, and a lot of people kind of regained the confidence in that. Like I said, like regulators and governments are not necessarily our foe, right? They're looking out for us as well as consumers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So as we are wrapping this up, Nisa, I'd like to hear a little bit about you. You talked about so much about your professional interests. So tell us about your life outside of, this business, top blockchain investor outlook,
What life outside of this? Consuming, I think. I have 2 kids. They take up a lot of time. Well, and I do love to travel. When, things open up and we're allowed to, I'll be back on planes and going to all these events. And that will be a great day to look forward to.
Do you have any hobbies, or did you?
Yeah, I did. I read a lot and went to the movies and skied a lot, but I'm still trying to work on maintaining some of those hobbies as well. It's a fine balance, right? Writing is kind of a hobby for me, just writing for Forbes. And I try to do that on weekends when I don't have meetings and it's quiet.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, if you fly to Dubai, you can ski at a mall. So
I know. That's also on my list.
Yeah. Or you can do water skis or whatever they're called in Israel when you come over. So that could come in handy. Very cool. Amazing. Well, Nisa, it's been a treat having you.
Thank you. It's so good to see you and catch up. Yeah, I'm looking forward to in person next time. It feels like another lifetime. We were on that panel together in New York.
For sure.
That was so long ago.
It was so long ago. It was like one of the last events, I've been to, I think. Well, it was 3 or 4 months before COVID, I think, hit. Yeah, and that was really so much fun. That panel was really fun, and the event was fun, and we're going to have many of those again, for sure.
Getting back to those again.
Great. Thanks for joining me on the Block Solid podcast. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or by visiting our website at solidblock.co/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review and spread the word. Thanks, Nisa. See you soon.
See you soon. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.